And further. Okay.
Hello, hello. We are so excited to have you here on Survivors. And we have a beloved friend of mine who I've actually met through Survivors. What is cool about Survivors is that we connect with people who have gone through the same tragedy as we have, losing a loved one. And through this journey, we have found a whole lot of different things that we never knew existed. And so if you're joining on here as somebody who has lost somebody who's going through a hard time, I want you to know that you have found the right place, because this is just a bunch of people who are just trying to make it through in life. I mean, so many of us never know what our trial will be, but I feel like God places people in our lives to help us. And if we are open to allowing people to help us, we will do it. So, so with further ado, we want to welcome Elizabeth Crapo, and she is a beloved friend, and her little angel, her name is Marah. If you've ever heard of any of her stories, you can listen to her story on different videos and stuff, but she is an angel that has done so much good in this world, even though she's not here. And Elizabeth was so fortunate to have her for a good 2 years. And so with further ado, Elizabeth, who is a mother of five children now, right?
Six now.
Yes,
Six.
five living and one in heaven, right? Angel. And they live in Indiana, and it's cold there. So
Yeah.
she's going to be talking on a subject that many of us are not aware of. Some of us never will have to go through this, but there's many of you out there who have to go through a hard struggle that so many people may not talk about, but it needs to be spoken of. And I'm so glad that Elizabeth is open to talking about her mental health journey, basically mental health awareness through grief that she's experienced and what she's learned. And so I hope that you guys just take a second, just listen, maybe jot some things down that kind of hit you. And I know that she's going to help us, help me, and just be open to what she says and try different things that has helped her as well. So thank you, Elizabeth.
Yeah, no problem. Okay. Let's see. I was gonna go to those questions. Hang on. Okay, so go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you just want to tell a little bit about yourself, just so they kind of know where you're at, how many years it's been, and a little bit about Marah, that would be amazing.
Yeah, sure. Okay, let's see. Let me try to take over
in the right-hand corner.
Yeah.
If you don't have it, it's okay. We can both be on the screen.
Okay. Well, it says the speaker, so maybe as soon as I start talking, it's going to recognize that and let me be the that. But
yep.
Let me try it again.
It'll never show you that it's only you speaking, just so you know. So you can just continue to go forward.
Oh, okay. Okay. We're just all learning Zoom. So yeah, like she mentioned, Elizabeth Crapo, married to Dobson Crapo, and so happy to be a mother of 6 children and 1 angel baby, and so grateful that through social media and through, I believe, our angels in heaven, we were brought together to be able to start Survivors and to be able to form a community of people that are going through grief. It's not always a topic that is openly talked about, and frequently we don't always know what we're experiencing when we're experiencing it, and to be able to have a community of people just to work through things, we just want to provide opportunities to connect, mainly through service. We find huge healing and opportunities to serve after, as we're going through our grief. So that's kind of what Survivors is. I want to make a quick disclaimer that we are not therapists. Tonight, it's going to be about some of the things that I've learned, and I've linked all the resources and references that I'll be speaking from and what has personally helped me. So if it helps you, great. And so before we talk about the grief part, I'm gonna briefly just talk about, I'm in my kitchen. So there's that live fun things that happen. So anyway, before we talk about the grief, I wanted to be able to make sure we're talking about what mental health awareness is and what I mean by that. We know that there's a lot of stigma that's been around mental health, mental illness, what that all means over the last several generations. And it's just a lot more recently that it's become something that we're a lot more aware of in our society, and that we're talking more about it, and this is great. I think a lot of previous generations didn't always talk about their grief or their experiences, and but what a lot of counselors and therapists and psychologists and all of them really want to help promote getting professional help when you need it, whether whatever that looks like, and to not be afraid of that. I know in the past it meant that maybe you weren't managing your life like a normal person if you had to reach out for help, and but now that we could accept it, that's a little bit more normal. Most of us will go through it at some point of our life. That, you know, poor mental health, mental illness, or irregularities in our brains like ADHD, postpartum depression, anxiety, eating disorders, and many others, that it's something that a lot of us will go through, and that we need each other to support each other, and then you know, to get help when we need it.
Basically what she's saying is tonight she's here to help us take what she's basically gone through in the last 2.5 years, and she's just pulling away certain things that she's learned. And I think this can be really critical for so many people that are going through the same journey or even something similar. I've learned a lot from her, because I'm like, thank you for going through the hard stuff. So I had to learn from you. And I just want, and I even told her, damn, like, I don't know if you've even known this, but you helped me with, like, she had an angel baby. I had an angel baby, but hers was before me. And she had miracles happen to her that helped me. And so that's what we're all here for. I think that's why tonight is so important, like she said. So yeah, thank you so much, Elizabeth.
Yeah, thank you. So just like what I've started to learn is that mental health awareness is basically, you know, when you have broken a leg, you clearly understand that something is wrong. And we can kind of look at mental illness or mental health kind of like that. Like it could be like a sliver, a chronic backache, or appendicitis. Like we have all these physical things that are happening to us, and they hurt, and we're aware of them. And it's a little bit more obvious most of the time where these causes are coming from, and they exhibit, you know, all those different symptoms. But we also need to be aware that mental health, poor mental health and mental illness also has causes, also has symptoms. And some of the causes could be, you know, chemical imbalances, you know, genetic disposition towards things, a head injury. You could, like I said, postpartum, gone through abuse, or even traumatic events like losing a loved one or going through divorce. And because of these various causes, our mental health can change from time to time. So it's not just one thing, it's going to be changing throughout our lives. And a lot of this has to do with what happens chemically in our brains and in our bodies, whether it's you know, these neurotransmitter chemicals trying to work through our brains, and you know, what happens physiologically to our bodies when we experience injury or stressors. So there's actually physiological things that are going on inside our brains that we can't just you know, wish ourselves out of or pray ourselves out of a lot of the times. And so mental illness or poor mental health can affect our moods, our relationships, our motivation. And because we can't always see the illness, we often confuse these symptoms like they're poor choices, like I'm just not doing what I know I'm supposed to do. And then we start to identify these character flaws in ourselves or in other people's and our loved ones. And we start to build like resentment and frustration and anger towards our loved ones because they're exhibiting these symptoms. And, it would be obvious if you broke your leg and you're not making dinner or you're not switching the laundry. But when it's the mental illness, like I said, you can't always see that. And so we start to have judgment on ourselves and guilt and shame and on others because of these, what we think are just poor choices. And in reality, it's just a symptom of mental illness. And we need to learn for ourselves and as a society what that all means. And I want to make it clear, I'm not suggesting to excuse poor choices, but just taking a step back and examining what could be going on and asking questions like, why is this happening? Why am I persistently doing this behavior? Why am I having these thoughts? Do I need help changing or stopping this behavior or these thoughts? And so on top of this extremely complicated topic of mental health awareness, we add grief. And it's so hard and it's so messy, and we need help understanding what is normal, what's not normal, and when do I get help for myself or others. Okay.
Can I ask the next question?
Yes, please.
All right. So prior to Marah's passing away, what was your experience and understanding of mental health? You talked a little bit about that, but like you talked about prior, but as you had her pass away, how did that interlock with each other?
Yeah. So prior to her passing, I'll just briefly mention a few things, then I'll go on with that. I believed I was, I felt I was optimistic. I kind of saw silver linings, focused on positive thoughts, and kind of person when it came to my own mental health, because I love all things regarding human development, personal development. I finished my degree in marriage, family therapy, and human development because that's my passion. And so I wanted to understand the psychology and the developmental stages and everything I could to help me understand, though imperfectly, an optimal way that I could try to raise my children and strengthen my marriage. I had experienced some traumatic events in my life a few times, and I got counseling and support when it was necessary. And then I felt like I moved on in healthy ways. Excuse me. I felt like I acknowledged that others might have chronic mental illnesses. Others might have situational or what's called acute episodes of depression or anxious feelings. We could experience poor mental health, but some people were able to manage with temporary help or even with help on their own. And I believe, and I still believe, that God has given us a variety of gifts and tools that can help each of us in different ways, whether it's through high quality of our sleep, of our food and supplements, water, a variety of exercises like running and yoga, and all of that in addition to the inspired modern day miracles of medicine. And then when Marah passed away, I was given a whole nother opportunity of learning and experiencing what comes to mental illness and grief. So since then, I've learned so much more. Soon after she passed away, my husband and I started getting individual and couples counseling. When the week that Marah passed away, the detective that was over our daughter's case, he recommended that we do everything we could to save our marriage, that in his experience, that most marriages didn't last when they had to go through this kind of a trauma or losing a child. And so I that shocked me. And Austin and I, when we first it made me sad, I will say that. when we first got married, we got married pretty quick. And so we were still get to know each other. And we decided in the first couple months that we needed help figuring out how to talk to each other, how to communicate. And so the counselor thanked us for coming in then and not waiting until we had terminal cancer of the marriage, is what he called it. And so it just helped me just be a huge advocate for counseling and therapy and other help, because sometimes it's nice to get that professional perspective that's unbiased, that maybe could help us see things in a different way. Because if you keep doing what you're keep doing, then things are never going to change. So we got to find tools and things that you can use to change. So anyway, when she died, we didn't wait very long to reach out for counseling, not just for ourselves, but for our marriage. We wanted to make sure that we weren't one of those couples that separated. And so, and we also, I wanted to be able to learn what I could do to help my children, because I wasn't just learning how to navigate my own grief, but now I had 4 other children at the time to be able to see how I could help them. So,
Elizabeth, one thing.
Yep.
So what you're saying is that it's normal to have frustrations with your husband when you're going through grief.
Heck yeah.
I can totally say that when I was going through, I thought I was a bad person when I was having negative feelings towards my husband, or like, what's going to happen to our marriage? Because he never blamed me. He never did any of that stuff. But there are some people that have to deal with the blame of a spouse, blaming them for the loss of their child, and they live with that. And I remember when I was going through these really hard feelings, because we both grieve completely different. You don't feel like you can help the other person because you're in so much grief and pain. But at the same time, you like don't want to give up. I remember researching specifically, do marriages that have lost a child succeed? And the results are so low. Like it's so sad, but the results are really high for divorces after somebody's lost someone. And I was like, I don't want to have a statistic. And I can tell you, when you're going through grief and pain of yourself, and then your spouse isn't supporting you how you want them or feel like they need to be, you're like, why don't you see this? And they're probably feeling the exact same way with you. And so I love that you say this, because we do need additional help. I have gone through therapy, but it took me a year. It took Elizabeth only a few months to get it. Some people go the day after they lose their child to therapy. And so everybody's on this different journey of getting help. But I used to think, if I go to a therapist, I'm weak. I'm not as strong as somebody that I know that has gone through a loss without therapy. But now that I've gone through it, I am so glad I did. And it is because there is a professional that doesn't know us, doesn't judge us, they're just trying to help us get our brains like organized, right? And I feel like that's what therapy did for me, was it organized my brain, so I didn't feel like I was going crazy and I wasn't messed up, And so I love that you just make us feel like it is a normal thing to have these feelings, and it is okay, but there is help that you are saying that is offered, and it's good to go for those things, right?
Exactly.
I love that.
Thank you. Yeah, you could go to, if you have a church leader that you could go to find someone, some health insurances will pay for it. I will say that as I've thought about how important counseling is, even if I have to figure out a way to pay for it, that it would be something I would do, because I'm never going to regret myself or my children receiving the help that we need earlier than maybe having to go through life in ways that maybe we wouldn't have otherwise. So anyway, it's one of those things that I would recommend praying and asking God to help you figure out a way to make it happen. That's my opinion. But when I was there at my counselor, he taught me something that I have found so valuable. And that is that there are the stages of grief that many of us know. There's, anger, denial, acceptance, and all those. But there's actually like a progression through grief. And in our survivors, about a year ago, we talked about these things. So you can go back in our YouTube and or our Facebook and look for these videos that we talked about these 3 different levels of grief. And a grief begins at what's called acute grief. And that's when we're right in, it just happened. We're right in the middle of the shock and in that, those huge waves and just numbness and all the intense feelings and emotions and just your brain just can't wrap yourself. I mean, it's just the really hard first part, like maybe a month or 2 that you're just really in a cloud of surviving, just taking one day at a time. And then it progresses into eventually what's called complicated grief. And this is what he described as, well, he said it's just complicated. And it's different. And I'm saying all this in general statements, but everybody kind of experiences this differently. So there's no necessarily exact timeline, but generally the second level that you get into is called, like I said, complicated grief. And it's kind of like you start feeling like a little bit more like can start living life a little bit better. But then it's kind of like when you broke your leg and you had surgery and you're in this miserable pain, like right at first. And then after a couple of weeks, you're like, oh, okay, I feel like I feel better than I did. So I feel like I can start kind of walking a little bit. But then all of a sudden, you realize that, oh, you take like several days off because you overdid it. And it's kind of like, the doctor's saying you're not going to be at 100% for a while. You're going to need physical therapy. You're going to need some time, and you're going to probably digress some. And then you're maybe take 2 steps forward and 3 steps back, and 1 step forward, but then 1 step back, but then 4 steps. Like it's just going to be this constant flow of not being at 100%. And during that stage is when I learned about, I'd experienced depression before during some of my traumatic events in my life, and nothing has touched this as far as my experiences go. But I'd had depression, but I didn't ever cognitively become aware of what my symptoms that I was experiencing before. And so as I was talking, this was during Christmas time, and my brother asked me, he's like, you probably have depression. And I was like, well, maybe, I don't feel like I'm sad all the time. I feel like, I feel kind of just numb. Like I just, he's like, are you enjoying being together, like with the family at this Christmas time? And are you enjoying things that you used to? And I was like, no, it's just all kind of numb. And then he talked about how he felt very closed off from God, like he couldn't. And I had felt that. I knew exactly what he was talking about. Like I would pray and I would try to do things, meditate that I used to do, feeling like I need him more than ever and I can't feel him. Like that is a symptom of depression. And let me make it clear that I understand that God's always there, but because of what's going inside our human brains and our limitations as humans, that we feel that way. And so it was a while that I experienced this complicated grief. And then eventually I feel like I've moved on to this last stage, this last level called integrated grief. And integrated grief is more where you've learned how to live life where you can keep moving forward every day, but you just keep grief alongside you. Like it doesn't get in your way, but it's there. Like you feel it. I had one other person talk about, and the acute grief is when you feel that crushing boulder, like you can't breathe and that kind of thing. Then over time, he talked about how eventually that rock gets smaller and smaller, and you just keep it in your pocket. And sometimes you pull it out because you want to feel that grief or that love, because that's how you feel your love for that person, those thinking about those memories and that grief. That's, you don't want to give that up. And so sometimes you pull it out and feel it and love your loved one, and then you can put it back in your pocket and be able to continue living your life. So that's kind of what integrated grief has looked like. And then I've also continued to understand new things about mental health and mental illness as I've navigated these topics with my family, so with my kids.
Nice. Man, you have so much good information, but also experience. And I love the rock thing. So just think of it. I used to think too that I wanted to get rid of my pain. But as time goes by, I was just telling Elizabeth, don't you feel like your memories are getting faded? And I hate to even admit that. And it's painful to admit that. But I remember going to my husband and being like, are your memories getting faded? He's like, totally. And it hurts because you're like, you still want to smell them, and you want to touch them, and you want to have all those memories, but your biggest thing that you can do is watch videos of them, and then you end up crying, and it's just that cycle. But I don't want that to ever be gone, because you feel so intense for them. And I used to pray for it to be gone. Now I'm like, I'm worried that one day, what if I don't feel those emotions? And I don't want that to be gone anymore. And it is true that now we can pick out that rock and say, okay, I'm ready to feel that emotion. Sometimes it just comes and there's a trigger that gets us, but it's not drawing us to be bitter all the time. And like depression, how you know if it's depression or not is if it's longer than a certain amount of time, and it's like controlling your life years after the loss. Because the first year for me was survival. I was not showing up. I wasn't doing my normal things. And that's normal when you lose a child or a loved one. But after a year, there should be some progression, right? And so just so you guys know, it's normal to feel those feelings. You're not going through depression if you're just feeling those feelings, and it's not normal. But in time, that's when you need to check yourself and see if things are getting any better, because you don't want it to be 20 years later and you're still bitter and mad about life, right? Or else you lose everyone around you. So very good. I really love that. Okay, the last question that we have, because time always runs so fast. What advice would you give our survivors community as they navigate through their grief or are helping a loved one navigate theirs?
Yeah. Well, I will definitely, I think I will touch on the fact that you need to be able to put on your oxygen mask so you can help your kids. I know that each child will typically navigate their grief in their age appropriate responses in their way. You'll need to consider their individual personalities and all of that. And so I had kids in each of those stages, and sure enough, they did things differently, and I had to navigate that. So it was important for me that I was modeling healthy ways to go through grief. And not that I was perfect, that's not what I'm saying, but I needed to figure it out and keep moving forward for myself, and not just get trapped in those things that are numbing. Some people, whether it's binging on TV or food or some alcohol, some drugs, there's just a variety of things that we can numb ourselves and getting into. And I wanted to point out too, that I learned probably the most when helping my teenage daughter. And she probably helped me understand my own mental health better than I think anyone has ever before, because she would come to me saying that she felt like she had depression or anxiety. And I was like, well, you're going through grief. Those are symptoms of grief. And she really felt like she needed to continue to get help. And so she got counseling, and I started to become very motivated to help her, because she, and she's given me permission to share this, that she had thoughts of taking her life, and she did some cutting behaviors, and she realized, and I realized, that what was going on was not okay. And then I started to, as I was trying to figure out what she was going through, I started to kind of analyze my own self, and I started to realize that I was having thoughts of, man, I just can't wait for this life to be over. Like, it's just so hard, like just to wake up every day and to keep fighting the same mental battles every day, and and to keep trying to figure out how to help my kids, and to keep figuring, like, it just got overwhelming. And So I started to see it in myself. And as she continued to get help and got the help that she needed and continues to get, I started to, like I said, recognize my PTSD. I started to recognize that depression doesn't just mean sadness. And so the sadness wasn't something I was experiencing, but I was experiencing things like no motivation. And I don't really know what things I could do in my spare time that would make me happy. I just started to realize that I had a lot of symptoms of depression, and and I started to realize, oh, I need help. So I started to get some counseling, and I started for myself to get the diagnosis that I need. I got diagnosed at 42 with inattentive ADHD, and that was such a, like, I'm so grateful for the people and the help that I was received to have that understanding, so that I could fix that piece in my life, at least have awareness so that I can know and not be so hard on myself for some of the things that I felt guilty about. So it was just so empowering to get the help that I needed. And it's going to be a continual process, and by no means have I arrived, but my life has changed in the especially last month, where I just get up and do things, and I just feel so much better. So I guess the advice that I would give our friends out here is, number one, we need compassion on ourselves and others. We need that empathy to just not be as judgmental on other people's behaviors, because we need to realize that we don't understand what's going on in their brains, whether it's physiological or just their thoughts, the things that are happening within their brains, the battles that they're fighting. We have no idea. We don't know why they're having a bad day, or snapping at us, or just look like they're being lazy, or there's just a myriad of things. Let's maybe take some questions, and number two would be to just educate ourselves. Then find some reliable sources. I've linked some here that have helped me. So find what you want that are reliable sources, but we need to understand what the symptoms are. And if we don't know the symptoms, then we don't know that there's a problem, and we don't want to find out too late what the symptoms were. So many out there are feeling very disconnected, and too many are taking their lives. And we just need to be a lot more proactive in all of our loved ones' lives. I'm just so grateful that my daughter's getting help that she needs, because I did not want to lose another daughter. And so I'm so grateful for the people that have guided us. And then we just need to know when to get help, and to be honest with ourselves when we need help changing or eliminating the thoughts that we're having, or the behaviors that are beyond our control. And, just really ask, what is our gut telling us? And maybe what promptings are you receiving from God? It's like, it's like I bring back to the leg analogy. If you break your leg, but then you're insisting that you can figure out how to get better on your own, or that you just need to make better choices, that's not going to fix your broken leg. And a part of making better choices is taking responsibility for those choices that we're making, and then acknowledging when we need help to make those changes in our choices. So like I said, I've linked those resources. I'm so grateful that I've been able to share a little bit about what my experience has been, and just be vulnerable with everybody, just hoping I can help someone.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. She is such a wonderful soul and such a good spirit. And we are so blessed that you shared your story. And I know there's so much more that you could share, but like we always say, as survivors, we are not here just for ourselves. We are here for you. We know this is a lonely road. This is one of the most loneliest, hardest roads to go through, the loss of someone we love so much. And I'm just going to end with this little quote. It says, mental health is not a destination, but a process. It's about how you drive, not where you're going. And so just remember, every day when you wake up, if you have a bad day, feel the bad day, but allow yourself to have more good days than bad days. If you've been on the journey for a longer period of time, reach out to someone that you trust, get the help that you need. Like she said, getting therapy is not looked down upon like it used to, and it should have never been looked down upon. Go get the help that you need so you can not recover, because I always say we will never recover without our loved ones. This is learning how to paddle through this journey, and we're gonna have good days, we're gonna have bad days, but it's almost like we have to wake up now and say, I'm gonna have a good day today. It's like it doesn't come just natural like it used to. And so just realize this is normal. But with survivors also, we want to welcome those people who are new, but also who have been on here for a while. But we're doing something super special at the end of this month, which is Sunday the 30th on our Connect. And we want anyone who has been thinking or is interested in doing a service project in honor of their loved one to come on the call. It's going to be a Zoom call where it's all live. It's not going to be recorded or anything, but we meet together and we basically come up with your choice on what you want to do for that service project. And all of us on Survivors will support you. We'll get the word out and we'll get people doing the same service project. So this is going to be a really big success for you. I will tell you, when I did Blankets for Babes and then Elizabeth did the first responders, you get to choose your own service project. So it's connected to that person that you lost. And so you feel like I'm honoring my child through the service I'm giving to others. And that is exactly what our loved ones want us to do. And so please join us. It is at 8 o'clock on a Zoom link. If you want the Zoom link, just ask for it on Survivors and we will send that to you, and invite anyone who may need that or who is thinking about it. And if you're not quite sure what we're even talking about, just come on and we will tell you the details, and you guys can go for whatever you want. You can make it small or big, whatever you like. So thank you so much again. And to all of you who are facing a difficult time with mental health, kudos to you. And we feel you, we see you, and we understand, because life is already hard. We need to put in that mental health stuff that people just don't get. You can feel alone. So just know that we're here, and remember, God is good. And even though we go through these things, God can help in more ways than one, but get extra help as well. So thank you, Elizabeth.
Yeah, thank you. Good night.
Okay, good night.